Good morning, everyone. I pray that your Wednesday, that you found spaces and places of joy, spaces and places of peace, spaces and places where you were able to simply exhale and take a deep breath and let go of all the stress or some degree of the stress that has been building up in each and every one of us. Maybe you were able to sing at the top of your lungs, whether you have a great singing voice or not, but it is your voice. Maybe you were able to do a dance move across your living room floor or wherever, and just times when you felt good. And that moment may have only been a moment. It may have lasted for 5 minutes. It may have lasted for a number of hours. It doesn't matter the length of time. It's only important that you're able to experience times of joy, times of peace, times of laughter, at least once a day. Hopefully there'll be more, but remember we focus on baby steps. So today we are talking about challenging your fears. And in the very beginning of the series, I had used the acronym for fear, which is false evidence appearing real. Things that tend to frighten us in a lot of instances because we perceive it as false evidence. It's actually false evidence, but it appears to be real in our mind. And so I use the example for me, when I encounter someone with a dog and they say, oh, he's really friendly or she's really friendly, she doesn't bite. In my mind, if the dog has teeth, the dog will bite. But what I have come to learn after being around a number of dogs is that just because they have teeth does not mean that they will bite me. So my fear was based on false evidence that appeared to be real. And so why is this important? Because for a number of us, we have allowed our fears to prevent us from moving forward, from walking in our purpose, from being all that we have been called and created to be. Some of you have so much creativity inside of you. You have so many skills. You have so much to offer to this world, but you have not done so simply because you were afraid. So today we want to talk about how do we move through our fear? Because trust me, some of you have books that have yet to be written. You have screenplays that have been yet to be made into movies. You have business ideas that have not manifested. You have some inventions in your head that could help us all in this world to make this world a better place, but fear has stopped you. And so, how do we move past this fear? Well, the first thing we do is acknowledge that we are afraid. And when I say that, it may seem very simplistic, but we first need to acknowledge it. Because sometimes instead of saying, I'm afraid, we make up excuses. We say, well, I can't pursue this particular thing because I'm too old. I can't do that particular thing because I'm not the right size, or I don't have the right personality, or no one will listen to me, or I'm not that disciplined. But I challenge you to look under those thoughts, and are they excuses, or are you simply afraid? Again, are they excuses, or are you simply afraid? Are you simply afraid do you have a fear of success? Do you have a fear of failure? And what stops you from pursuing your goals or even acknowledging that you have those goals is because you were afraid. For most of us, when we were little children, we would do the exercise that says, when I grow up, I want to be, and fill in the blank. Some people wanted to be cowboys. Some people wanted to be doctors. Some people wanted to be lawyers. I wanted to be a teacher. And it's taken me moving around this planet all these years to realize that irrespective of whatever role I found myself in, I was actually living out my childhood desire. Because even if I'm doing therapy, if I'm preaching, I am still teaching. And so I would invite you to consider, what did you want to be or do when you were a kid before the world or different people's messages kind of snatched that dream right away from you? What is that thing that you wanted to do? Now you may say, well, I done had some children and I'm not in the best shape. So my desire to be a dancer is probably not going to manifest because I'm not the right size. I'm older. But I'm here to tell you that's not necessarily true. You can go and take some dance classes. They have adult dance classes. They have adult dance troupes that perform locally. Some of them actually tour. And they are different sizes and they're different shapes. You might say, and I have someone who I met on a travel trip, a friend, who her desire was always to be a doctor. And now she is in her late 30s after having had a child and whatever other challenges she's had. And she is pursuing her goal of becoming a doctor. She is taking those classes. She's not allowing her fear to stop her from pursuing her goal. And I want to focus on that, not allowing the fear to stop you from focusing on your goal. We first acknowledge that we're afraid, get rid of those excuses, and what it comes down to is, I'm afraid. And then guess what? You can do anything scared. Trust me. You don't have to be brave to move through your fear. You don't have to have all the answers and have everything lined up. You don't have to be perfect to move through your fear. In most instances, when we're afraid and we did it anyway, that's exactly what happened. We did it anyway. We did it in fear and trembling, but we did it anyway. I remember, this is years and years ago, a good friend of mine had a fear of water. And so she wanted to challenge her fears, and I said I would support her. So we signed up for a adult swim class that was basic. I don't think it was actually called this, but it may as well have been called swimming for scaredy cats or something like that. It acknowledged that the people in the class had a fear of water. And I did not have a fear of water. I was just there for support, and because, as I've said in earlier videos, I don't really know how to swim. I don't know how to breathe in and out of the water. So anyway, make a long story short, my friend never did show up for the class, but I stuck it all the way through. And at the end, in order to pass, you had to jump in the water. And that's where my fear manifested. I have this fear of jumping off of anything, and it has to do with fear of heights, fear of harming myself. And so, but it was the last thing I had to do. So everybody in the class had jumped into the pool, into the deep end, and except for me and another person. And, we both were equally kind of scared. But she was allowing her fear to show much more than I was. But I was scared, And so finally, when I realized that she was not going to go ahead and do it, that if I wanted to pass this class, I needed to do it, I created an image in my head that allowed me to move through that fear. One of the things that I thought about was I had watched all these other people do it, and they had jumped in and they came back up to the top and they were fine. And I began to think to myself, okay, what do they have that I don't have? Well, apparently they weren't afraid, but I was. But I knew that the task, jumping in, was possible. So I did it in spite of my fear. And guess what? The sensation of hitting the water and going down and coming back up was one of the best sensations I've ever had in my life. Now, I'm not going to tell you that, and from that day forward, I was jumping into pools, because that's not necessarily true. But in that instance, I challenged my fears. So the first thing is to acknowledge that you're afraid. The second thing is to challenge your fear, to determine what would you do if you weren't afraid? And that's our question for today. what would you do? What would you accomplish? What goals could you achieve if you were not afraid? For some people, it may not necessarily be doing, pursuing a career. It may simply be getting out of a bad relationship or ending some problematic relationships in your life. Because we're not just talking about your intimate relationships. Some of you have some sister girlfriends or some brothers or some fellas in your life, and the relationships are dysfunctional. They're really dysfunctional. These are friends who, I'm going to say friends in quotes, who don't necessarily support you, who may bring a lot of negativity in your life. And you know that they are problematic. You know that they're messy. But for whatever reason, you continue to be in that. And so the challenge is, what would you do if you weren't afraid? Maybe what you would do if you weren't afraid is to set boundaries, to determine, what, this relationship is not necessarily healthy for me, so I'm going to change the parameters of how much I interact with this person. Whatever your thing is, maybe there's a book that's inside of you that you can write. Maybe you had a strong desire to be a chef, that you really like to cook. Maybe you want to do, maybe you are ready after many years of marriage and now you're divorced and you're older, and maybe you're now ready for a relationship, but you're scared. And your fear is that nobody's going to want me, or all these guys wanted these young girls. And I would encourage you, even with all those messages you're giving yourself, take a chance, take a risk, open up your mind to the possibility that what's holding you back is simply your fear. There's someone out there for everyone. I have so many examples of people who have remarried or got married for the first time past the age of 50, as well as past the age of 60 and 70 and beyond. So the question I leave you with today is, what would you do if you were not afraid? Please put your answers in the comments. I invite you to like and share. And very quickly, on Saturday, this coming Saturday at 7 o'clock, I'm going to do a live. And I encourage you to join me because there's something I want to talk to you about that I need your input from. So again, think about, what would you do if you were not afraid? And I invite you to do that on purpose and with intention, and not, I'll think about it later, but to think about it now and put your answer in the comments, because our first step is simply acknowledging that I have gifts, I have talents, that I deserve more, I have so much more in me, but my fear is preventing it from coming out. Love you all, and I will talk with you tomorrow. Can't wait to see your comments about what you would do if you were not afraid. Bye-bye.